right, well thank you guys for coming, and they'll probably leave the doors open so people can come on in and join us. But yeah, you came in, you stood in line for the psychology of psychopaths. Woo! Okay. Didn't know if it was a surprise to you guys or not. But so I'm Heather Ness, and I talk about the psychology of different things, nerdy things, at different cons and on my blog, Super Psych. I have a degree in clinical psychology, which is kind of what gives me the background to talk about these things. And clinical psychology has to do with disorders and treatment of those mental disorders. I also am a professor at one of the universities in Georgia, and two classes that I teach are the psychology of superheroes and the psychology of video games. So if any of you guys are into video games or the Persona 5 series, the Persona series, you can see me at the Ass Crack of Dawn tomorrow at 9 a.m. talking about Persona 5. But right now we'll talk about psychopaths. So first of all, this is one of my favorite series, and I talked about it at other cons before, and usually I don't recycle panels because I get bored really easily. But I really, really like talking about psychopaths because it's pretty cool. In this panel, what I'll probably do is talk less, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to talk less about characters per se, and talk more about the world of psychopaths, some world building. So in psychopaths, you have what's called your crime coefficient. And what's cool is I have an assessment. We can figure out your crime co-assessment later. Yeah, it's not scientific, okay? I'm not your doctor, but we'll do it later. But anyways, what it does is it tells the civil system how likely you are to commit a crime. Maybe you have already committed a crime, in which case your crime coefficient has gone up. But even if you haven't yet, something's going on with you that makes this all-knowing system detect that you are very likely to commit a crime. So why not take care of you first before you hurt society? So in this society, in psychopaths, they have different street scanners, checking people for their cloudy hues to see how high their crime coefficient has maybe raised. Security drones detect people, and if it's getting a little bit questionable, we won't kill you yet, but we will send you to therapy, which we'll talk about in a second. The police officers or investigators are giving these dominators these guns that have the civil system in them that can detect your crime coefficient as well, and those are what will either paralyze or kill you depending on what your level is. It measures aggression, likelihood of compulsion, and your stress. So what would the dominator possibly use in order to measure these things? Well, anytime that you're getting stressed out, your body has different physiological responses to it. So we have a nervous system, right? And the nervous system goes everywhere and throughout our body. Central one spreads out.
May I comment? Is one of those identification factors for pulse rate?
Yeah, so a good thing.
I'm pretty sure my view is cloudy right now, so I'm gonna sit down and see if I find myself.
Okay, we'll get to the therapy one in a second, so that'll help. That seems okay. So, yeah, so part of it is your pulse rate. So your nervous system has two modes. I was about to say on or off, but it's never off. That would be bad. But it's either aroused or not aroused. You're either getting really, really excited or you're calmed down and things are working as normal. Okay? If you're getting really, really excited, that's called your sympathetic nervous system. And the sympathetic nervous system is what increases your pulse rate, gets your lungs breathing a lot faster, causes your muscles to tighten up, your skin to start sweating, all of these different responses putting on different heat. So the dominators are measuring these different physiological stress responses. And since they're measuring something that's pretty objective, built in science or the scientific measurement, the inspectors don't have to worry about any kind of responsibility. If the dominator says shoot, just shoot. Someone smarter than you has figured out this problem. You're just there to work the technology that knows better than you. So they have this displacement of responsibility. They're just taking orders. When I say just taking orders, does that make you think of anything? Like maybe, what do you think? Like some sort of historical event?
I mean, outside of the obvious allusion to Nazism, there were the actual psychological experiments on whether people would be more likely to act cruelly if an authority figure told them to do so.
Yeah, exactly. So the big thing about the Holocaust was a lot of those people those Nazis, were just taking orders. They were like, I didn't really want to do this. I wasn't the mastermind behind everything, but someone else higher up on the ladder gave me the order and I followed it. I was just taking some orders. But you're right, the thing about that, with the Holocaust happened, that's what really started the whole branch of what's called social psychology. That's when psychologists were like, okay, we've been making dogs salivate and poking frogs with a stick for a little while, but now we really want to know, why would someone do that? So it started that whole branch. So someone whose crime coefficient has gone up, their hue has gotten cloudy, is referred to as a latent criminal. Latent because they haven't done anything yet, but the possibility of them doing something is pretty high. So what if we knew that someone was 99% possibly going to be a mass shooter? Would you wait until after they've done it? This is a rhetorical question, I don't want to know your thoughts. Would you wait until after they've done it? Or would you try and do something about it ahead of time? So the system is based on, there's these latent criminals who, based on our evidence, our scientific research, are pretty darn likely to commit this crime. We'll stop them ahead of time, save lives, help society that way. One of the inspectors says, don't think that the guys you're about to meet are humans like us, those latent criminals. They're not humans like us. Their psychopaths' crime coefficients exceeded a specific value. So not only are they just taking orders, but it becomes a lot easier to just take orders and to shoot someone down when you're told to if you no longer think of them as a human. And like, we don't do this necessarily to this extent all the time, but we do this so often. We have what's called these in-groups versus out-groups. You have whatever groups that you like to associate with. Your circles. And then you have groups that you're not in, those out-groups that you don't identify with. We tend to think of other people who are in our in-groups as individuals. But then people who are in those out-groups that we don't belong to, that we don't know really well, we just know we don't belong there, that they're not one of us, we kind of generalize them. Lump them all into one group. High schools do this all the time with their football, and their homecoming. I've never been to high school, but like, hardly anyone will say, yeah, everybody in my group is exactly like this. Now, you think of yourselves as individuals, but then you look at those out-groups, and it's really easy to lump them all into one big category. New Yorkers are so rude. But you get my example. It's easier to hurt other people once you lump them all into one group. Stop thinking of them as an individual. Think of them as other. It's especially easier if you're not even thinking of them as human. So what if, from the other person's perspective, they've been told that they're not human? What about the latent criminal who's being told, well, your crime coefficient has exceeded a specific value, You are now a latent criminal. You are a danger to society. You're no longer even really human. If you get told that enough, you start thinking, well, what if it's true? And then if you start thinking, well, what if it's true? What if I am dangerous to society? What if I'm not worth a lot? I'm not human. Then what's to keep that person from engaging in some sort of crime? That's what's referred to as a self-fulfilling prophecy. The one character was falsely scanned. You know, your hue is getting kind of cloudy. It's getting kind of dangerous. Just go to therapy, we'll bring it back down. And he was like, I know how this is going to work. The therapy's not going to help. It doesn't help the other people. They come back, and then it keeps going up until eventually they're paralyzed or they're killed. So if that's what's expected of me, why not have fun now and do whatever of these crimes? So he was just going along, being a husband, being a dad, until he was told, you're a criminal. And then he behaved as a criminal. We came up with the term self-fulfilling prophecy from an educational research. Some psychologists came in, falsely studied a bunch of students, they were just sticking around, and then told the teachers, hey, this group is really, really smart. This group is really, really dumb. Do what you will with that information. Which group do you think the teachers spent more time with? The smart ones. Teacher spends more time with a student, they start doing better in their schoolwork. Later, the psychologist came back in, restudied the kids, for reals this time, and they were like, oh wow, these kids that we called smart, they really weren't, they were just, all jumbled over, they're just random. They were doing a whole lot better. And the kids who were labeled as dumb, the teacher kind of was like, I don't know their inner motivation, I don't know that. But maybe they were like, well, I only have so much time and so much resources. Should I give it to the kid who could do a lot with the resources in my time, or the kid who probably won't? So those kids started doing a lot worse. So they came up with what's called a self-fulfilling prophecy. Basically, if you believe something, your behavior kind of makes it true. What's then kind of seen as surprising, though, if you think of someone as not being human, and then you finally meet them, and they seem pretty normal to you, because all these latent criminals just look like everybody else, humans. How surprising. An investigator also said terrible misunderstanding and rumors about latent criminals were common in those days. If a family member happened to show a high crime coefficient, that alone caused the rest of the family to be treated as if they were the same. Do you guys know any mental health stereotypes? Maybe that one should also be rhetoric. I'm not gonna have you guys throw out things on that one. One mental health stereotype is that people who have a psychotic disorder, so they have delusions or hallucinations, something like schizophrenia, they're really dangerous. But we also commonly don't know a heck of a lot about schizophrenia. Most people don't know someone who has schizophrenia even, or they don't interact with them on a daily basis. So if you don't know about something, it's hard to combat those stereotypes. But actually, people who have schizophrenia or some kind of psychotic disorder, they're way more likely to be the victims of a violent crime than to be the doers of it, because they're really easy. If someone doesn't have a grasp of reality, it's really easy to take advantage of them. So they have these different, basically basically mental health stereotypes about these latent criminals. They don't view them as humans. And then it kind of was like contagious as well. If your mom is bipolar, maybe you are as well. And what does that mean for you and the person that you're dating? So these latent criminals not only had to deal with their own stereotypes and this self-fulfilling prophecy, but their family had to deal with the social stigma as well. In the show, you see them using what's called the occupation aptitude test. And what's kind of cool about this is, like, psychologists already do this. We totally have career aptitude tests. So in the show, it fits citizens with careers. It tells you this is what you should do. There's this theorist called Holland. He came up with 6 different personality types, how you can correlate them, or how you can help you decide on what career that you've had. If you ever had to take the SAT and you got on the college board, you might have taken that quiz. I took it and it was like everything from like garbage person, which some days, to like anything. Totally unhelpful. Came up with the different categories: investigative, like a con A, creative, conventional. Those are those accountants, and I'm allowed to pick on them because that's my brother-in-law. What are the other ones? Investigative, social. Are there any creative people in the room? Not. Okay. Anybody who likes creative things? You're at an anime con. You are literally here to celebrate animation. All of you like creative things. Just one guy in the back. I don't even know how I got there. Okay. So you gotta have a society that has some kind of creative stuff, even in a cyberpunk kind of dysphoric one. You gotta have people creating things. But so the civil system authorizes who can be creative and who can't, but they keep a close eye on them. Because if you have ever been creative, or if you have enjoyed something that is creative, whatever kind of media, music, movies, anime, what have you, usually we enjoy them because they stir up something in us. Whether it's like the deep stuff, like, oh, that really made me feel something on like an existential level, or if it was just a good time, it stirs up some kind of emotion. But that emotion causes our body to have very similar physiological responses to stress. In fact, when you're terrified, your body looks really, really similar to when you're in love, which makes a lot of sense. So these latent criminals, someone can become a latent criminal if they get too into their art or too into their music. Now the big difference, I said, we have our own personality test that tries to match you up with a career, tries to help people go into some direction or another. But with this one, you're told, you do just job. You'll be an investigator, you'll be an artist, but we'll watch you. And then the jobs were ranked in different kinds of classes or levels, like a tier sort of thing. Pay grade, respectability in your society, creating this chaste society where some people have more respect than others. Getting back to, and this is kind of connected to the artist, getting into what's called the psychohazard. Sometimes your cloudy hue can become contagious. This is another reason why creators are so dangerous, because they inherently have an audience. So while you're getting stirred up by the emotions of whatever it is that you're creating, you're putting forth that, and other people are looking at it or listening to it or reading or whatever, and then they're getting stirred up as well. But there was this one character, a professor, who had a background in clinical psychology. I like this guy. And so he knew about like mental health and those disorders. And criminal profiling before the civil system came into place. Any of you guys watched Mindhunters on Netflix? Yeah, I'm reading the book, it's really cool. It's really boring actually. It's boring in like a nonfiction kind of way. The show is really cool because then there's guts everywhere. So he's an FBI agent who started the whole criminal profiling thing. Whereas you see this crime and you start seeing these patterns, and you're like, I know exactly what this guy is doing. And in the book, too, he's like, you have a comb in your back pocket. And then the serial killer was like, oh shit, you got me. And he confesses to the whole thing. So this professor in Psychopaths taught about this sort of thing, taught about clinical psychology, stirred up different ideas and emotions in his students, raised their crime coefficients. Just by lecturing, he clouded their hues. They say that a psychohazard is a mental disease. When it spreads, this is how things turn out, referring to riots. So what's kind of interesting is, have you ever thought about a mental disease or a mental disorder being contagious? Because that's the apocalypse right there. That's how we're all going to go. There's actually what is referred to as, it's an actual disorder, it's shared delusional disorder. And probably this whole, this one disorder, like the best example of it, is this family that was in Australia who, for whatever reason, thought the mafia were after them. And they went on like a 10-day trip, different kids went off in different directions, they all believed it. All hopped in the family Volkswagen, that part, I don't know, and then just drove across Australia, all thinking that this was about to happen. And then it's always kind of like, were the mafia after them? But it's something that happens that if someone close to you, that you have a close personal relationship, engages in some kind, is suffering from some kind of delusion or psychotic disorder, that the people closest to them start taking that on. And scientists don't know a heck of a lot about it. Because one, it's like, well, how does that happen? Because it's not like airborne or something. And then you're also kind of wondering, well, is it a delusion or do they truly believe it? Just because their significant other told them. But with the psychohazard, someone else is experiencing these physiological reactions to stress, and it causes your stress levels to rise as well. Kind of like a mob mentality. If enough people are getting upset, and then it spreads. And not everyone knows exactly what they're upset about, but they're all pretty mad, and you might as well go get your torches and pitchforks. But the civil system doesn't just paralyze and destroy you. It does have an option for therapy. If your crime coefficient is low enough, we can still fix you at this point. It's implied throughout the show that positivity keeps your psychopaths low, keeps your hue clear. So it's kind of also implied that when they go to therapy, they learn how to be more positive, how to reduce their stress levels. But then they show the therapy rooms, the institutions where people go, and you see padded cells with alarms and paralyzing gas, which shrieking alarms and paralyzing gas kind of really do the opposite of lowering your stress levels. Technically, I guess if you're paralyzed, your body's not doing a whole heck of a lot to respond. But like after you come out of it, you're dealing with the PTSD now. It's even said latent criminals don't often return to society with a normal state of mind from the rehabilitation facility. They endure mental breakdowns after they get back out. Their criminal coefficient even worsens. Or they just get used to the environment of staying in the institution. There was another research study where psychologists were like, psychologists are weird, we're a wild bunch, you know. They were like, what if we fake it and try to get into a mental institution? This was like in the 60s, where there were like no code of ethics. And so a bunch of them were like, all right, we'll answer the questions as if we have some kind of mental disorder, and we'll play pretend, and we'll act it out. So they got in because they knew all the right answers to the old questions. And so they were admitted as patients into the mental institution. And then after a while, they were like, this isn't fun anymore. And they were like, we were just kidding, actually, everybody. JK, we don't have a mental disorder. We're researchers. We're about to be famous. And then all the workers there were like, how does that make you feel? And they're like, no, really. We're not patients, we don't have anything, we're fine. You can let us out of here. We're gonna write this up, we need to go back to our university. How long have you been thinking that you go to work at a university? They truly, and they were like, all right, we're gonna act our normal selves, and then you'll see. Went on acting their normal selves, couldn't get released. Because they were told, the workers were told, these people have mental disorders. And then they start seeing it in everything. After people get out, in order to try and keep them having breakdowns or having their coefficients worsen, they're given these therapeutic devices to help manage stress. So like if your heart paces too quickly, a beat will go off. Do something, calm down now, whatever you're doing, get out of that situation, calm down so that your body, a different part of your nervous system can engage and you can start relaxing. They could even go to different therapists, but your real advice is use these devices. Keep your crime coefficient down. Don't get too stressed out. Listen to music, but the right kind of music. After a mass psychohazard, so that contagious, cloudy hue, the society will try to take care of it, keep too many people from getting too cloudy of hues, and have mental care sessions. Let's try and handle this situation before it gets too out of control.